hello, and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller, and with me once again is arts reporter Toni Tresca. Hey, Toni, how's it going?
Hey, Alex. Going good.
All right. We are recording here on Sunday morning, November 12th. So as usual, we will review some of the shows, the latest shows that we've seen and or reviewed, and also take a look at what's coming up on stage around Colorado. And then later in the pod, I'll have my interview with Leean Kim Torske, who's the literary director for the Denver Center. So this is, we've always wanted to have someone on the show to talk about dramaturgy. And Leean really offers a great summary of what it's all about. And we even talked about one of those burning questions, which is, how do you pronounce dramaturg or dramaturge? I think it confuses people because it seems like it should have an E on the end, which would be the soft G sound, but it doesn't. So maybe it's a hard G, but I've heard it. Even people in the field don't seem like they've quite been able to agree on, you know, they'll say dramaturg and then dramaturgy. So I don't know. What do you think, Toni?
That is funny. I guess I had not heard that there was an internal debate going on. I guess I've always defaulted to dramaturg, but I guess there's a group of people who I may be alienating out there.
I don't know. Maybe it's just in my own head. It's just like I kind of obsess over like words and how they sound and how they're spelled and stuff like that. But it's an unfamiliar term to a lot of people, and it's an interesting field of the theater arts profession. So stick around for that interview with Leean. It's really fun. And a quick note that I just published a kind of a longer feature story about the new Miners Alley Performing Arts Center, which is opening December 2nd in Golden. And so this is a big deal, not just for Miners Alley, but really it's, you know, there's so many theaters closing or shortening their seasons. And here's a theater that's expanding. It's going from this kind of inadequate facility that they've had for quite a while with like posts in the way and kind of crappy old seats. And
the backstage is it's like you can barely fit a person in that hall, in the hallway back there. Dressing rooms are tiny. Yeah.
I don't know how they did it all these years. So, and so I took a tour of the facility a few weeks, it was almost a month ago, it was mid-October. And, you know, it was still, you know, very much still a work in progress. All the heavy stuff was done, but they still hadn't hung the lights and put in the seats and stuff. And so Len Matteo, the executive director there, or the artistic director, walked me through it. And it was really fun. So check out that story on the OnStage Colorado site. And so it's interesting because they'll have concurrent shows in both theaters. So they'll have A Christmas Story at the current theater running from November 24th through the end of December. And then the new theater will have the Great American Trailer Park musical from that opening night on December 2nd through the 31st. And we'll be there on the grand opening night. I think the governor is going to be there, and there's going to be...
Yeah, it's a big deal. There's like a ribbon cutting to kick it all off, and then a whole afternoon and evening of events before kind of the kickoff of the Great American Trailer Park musical that evening.
And so, I haven't seen an agenda yet, but I assume we'll be there for a while. So that's coming up. Very exciting theater news. And then another thing that we were talking about. So in a little bit, we're going to do a little rundown of all the holiday shows coming up. But we wanted to also chat about this Colorado Business Committee for the Arts Economic Activity Study. And you kind of dug into this a little bit. So you can talk through that a little bit and how it relates to some of the things we've been talking about the sort of the economic viability of theaters.
For sure. So I kind of found this study via a great article over in the Colorado Sun that came out on November 3rd. Just a shout out to them over there. And the big news that kind of came out of this report, which is funded by the Business Association as well as the Scientific Cultural Facilities District, also known as the SCFD, and it's a survey of their organization. So it's only organizations that are part of the SCFD. And they kind of found that historic federal and local investments have led to a whopping $2.6 billion in economic activity over 2022, because the survey just covers that year. However, it also notes that about $81 million of that is federal funds that were injected as a one-time relief package. So those funds won't be coming again. And it also found that audience attendance, while it was up back up from 2020 and 65% in the pandemic. It's down about 15.6% from 2019. So that kind of general feeling within the industry that attendance is still lower is kind of reflected back in the data that they're providing. And every single organization that's a member of the SCFD has to report information for grants. So we have full information for every member of the SCFD, which is a bunch of theaters throughout Boulder and Denver County areas. So this is a really in-depth study that they've put together.
Yeah, it's interesting. The whole idea of public funding for the arts is such a controversial one in this country. Conservatives tend to be opposed to it, and they really are always trying to chop that stuff out of the budget, everything from funding for PBS and that kind of stuff. So whereas a lot of other countries, value that. And I don't think it's going to change, but I don't know.
I'm not sure. But the study also kind of found that employment is up. So that the city currently employs 13,551 people, and it noted that there was a big decrease in part-time work within the industry, so a lot more full-time and contract jobs. But it noted additionally that total personnel expenditures increased from 2019 to 2022. And with some of these other numbers in here, I'm wondering if that's entirely sustainable, particularly with this fact that this wasn't in the Colorado Sun article, but there were some concerning statistics about education, the theater education, that were buried later in the report itself. It starts by saying that regular events, as we all know, that many organizations have held for many years were canceled in 2020, 2021, and 2022 due to COVID concerns, then elaborates on why the education system is more difficult to get into than before, like teacher shortages, lack of connections in the industry, even things like bus driver shortages to just take kids to the event.
Right.
It's like these little factors that you don't think about that the report cites. And then it drops this bomb. Children have only been engaged with, on average, with 2 cultural organizations in 2022, which is an 11.2% decline between 2019 and 2022. And then it also notes that outreach efforts by these cultural organizations have decreased by 35% as well, which I thought was also pretty concerning.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that, it goes to staffing, I always like to point out that there are certainly ways that, you can do things cheaply and without spending a lot of time. But, I think theaters need to educate themselves on what those are and keep doing that, because as we spoke about recently, if you don't get them young, you may never get them, because that's when people get turned on to, many things in life, whether it's the arts or sport or literature, whatever it is. So, fascinating study there. So definitely something that anybody who's interested in the art scene in Colorado should check out there in the Colorado Sun. Yeah,
definitely check out that Colorado Sun article. And if you're a real numbers freak like me and you want to dive into the full report, the Colorado Business Committee for the Arts also published the full 23-page study on their website that you can dive into.
That's great. So for those who haven't listened to the podcast a lot, Toni is, in addition to being an awesome arts journalist, is also a student at the University of Colorado Boulder, and he's working on his MBA, but also an MFA in theater administration. So this is right up your alley, big time.
Yeah, when I saw that they published the report, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, it's a Christmas present. I got weirdly excited.
You could do your thesis on it. Yeah. All right. Well, switching to something a little more happy and fun is holiday shows roundup. And so, we have a full calendar on OnStage Colorado, and we've been very busy. Lane Ware, a big shout out to her. She does kind of half the list for me, for us. And all these things are showing up. And so we're going to do I think you're doing a story about, in addition to just holiday in general, but like all the many Nutcrackers that are out there, right?
Yeah, I'm doing a nice little roundup of so everything from Hip Hop Nutcracker that's going to be opening this Friday, actually, over at the Denver Center. That's like the big kind of kickoff to the Nutcrackers. You've got also the Colorado Ballet is doing the Nutcracker as well.
The classic, yeah.
The classic one. And then there's a whole bunch of various the towns around Denver also have their showings of them in their various concert halls. So be on the look. That list should be coming out in Westward this week. So yeah, so many Nutcrackers.
So many Nutcrackers. So I'm actually going to the hip hop Nutcracker, so that'll give me some exposure.
Are you going to be there Friday night?
I am, yeah. It's only a couple of days, like 2 or 3 day run. So if you want to see it, hit it. So a couple of other things to mention. And so I would just mention that, these holiday shows, this is when theaters really, really kind of tie off their budget for the year. They tends to be the most lucrative time of year because people love to come out to see these shows at Christmas time. And as a consequence of that, a lot of these shows sell out. So it's not too early to start grabbing those tickets. So think about some of these shows. So we talked about Hip Hop Nutcracker. Camp Christmas starts this week, which is and it's back inside at the Stanley Marketplace. It was started outside during the pandemic, and it was kind of it was sort of a different kind of experience. I don't think it was quite as solid as the inside one was. You just couldn't do as much. So I think this will be a really fun year to go. And they've got all kinds of it's great for the whole family, but they've also got, adult beverage stations and hot chocolate and all that kind of stuff. And so that runs all the way through the season. And also at the Denver Center, the big granddaddy of them all, A Christmas Carol, is starting in the Big Wolf Theater. Or
the previews start later this week, and then it opens. I believe its opening night is the day after Thanksgiving.
Okay, yeah. So if you haven't seen that, or even if you haven't seen it in a couple of years, that one's so much fun to go see. And then there's kind of an outlier that I've gone to a couple of times with our grandkids is Cirque Spirit of Christmas at the Gaylord Rockies, which is that ginormous hotel resort out by the airport. And it's kind of almost like a small Cirque du Soleil type show, but it's pretty darn good. And there's all kinds of other stuff. They've got all kinds of stuff for the kids to do. So that one's really fun, but be prepared to turn out your wallet a little bit. It's definitely a little spendy. And that starts November 24th and runs through the season. At Miners Alley, we were just talking about, so one of their other last shows in the soon-to-be old space is The Story of the Nutcracker, which is a version of it for kids. Down in Cripple Creek, the Butte Theater is doing The Christmas Cricket of Cripple Creek. And then you mentioned the Colorado Ballet. Their Nutcracker starts 11/24 and runs through Christmas Eve. And the Arvada Center has a really big production of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, which, I don't know, it's not necessarily a Christmas show, but it kind of has that Christmas vibe, I would say.
I think it fits the trend of theaters doing these really interesting counter programmings that are festive, but not necessarily Christmassy or holiday season. I think another one that would fall into this category is Candlelight Theater. Their holiday show is Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is not a explicitly Jesus show. It's a Old Testament story, in fact. And as the director mentioned to me when I was talking to an interview, God is never mentioned in the show. So it's more of just it's a fun parable about the power of family and learning to connect. So that one also sounds like a similar vein to kind of what's going on over at the Arvada Center and Cinderella.
It's a great show, and I'm sure Candlelight will do a bang up job with it. And that's a show that's been around for quite a while, but it's a really fun one to see, no matter what your religious proclivities might be. So that runs through from the 24th through the end of December. Adam's Mystery Playhouse is kind of taking a page out of the Die Hard genre with a made-for-TV holiday homicide. So that's November 17th through the end of December. And of course, that's a little dinner theater, so that's a lot of fun.
If you haven't been, I can imagine going for the holidays with your family. It's kind of like the one thing I think you could get a big group of people to kind of agree on. It's got that general feel. They're going to go in. They're probably going to make fun of everyone at your table, and you'll get a kind of fun Die Hard show.
Yep. Speaking of Die Hard, there's a show coming up at the Denver Center at their Garner Galleria Theater, which is sort of their cabaret, and it's a one-hander called Yippee-Ki-Yay, a Die Hard parody. So it's one guy doing all kinds of Die Hard stuff, and that's looks like that'll be fun. I'll be checking that one out. That runs from December 6th through the 23rd. one of the things that we wanted to talk about in an upcoming episode is content warnings and advisories and how necessary they are. And I just was checking the dates on the Denver Center site, and I happened to notice that the content warning for this show says advisory. Content warning, divorce, foot trauma, German terrorists. So watch out. I wouldn't think you would need a content warning for foot trauma. Terrorists, I suppose, but
I don't know. Divorce. Maybe who's to say? That's funny. Yeah. Well, more in-depth to conversation on content warnings to come.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, there was definitely there was a spirited discussion on the Facebook among the theater people on Facebook. So there's that. The Winter Wondrettes, which they'll be at Longmont Theater Company, and then Act a Lady at Bas Bleu is running 11/24 through 12/17, and it says accompanied by accordion. And so this is it's got something about a Christmas fundraiser. It's in an Elks Lodge. It's a Midwestern fable. So that sounds like a really interesting show. And it reminded me, Toni, did you know that I used to be an elk?
No. What? No, I didn't.
I was an elk. Yeah. Back in Summit County when I turned 21, my dad was like an exalted ruler at the Elks. And he wanted me to be an elk so bad that I was like, all right, I'll be an elk. So it was pretty funny. I was an elk for a few years. There's definitely some interesting stories. But, I think about that now, and I think about how so many men in particular talk about like there's a lot of loneliness is a big problem. And I keep wondering, like, can those fraternal organizations or even ones that are more inclusive, and the Elks is at one point finally started accepting women as full on elk members and not lady elks as they were previously. But yeah, you could see, that third place, it's not home, it's not work. It's just the pub or something like that, as long as you're not getting too carried away drinking, because a lot of them did. So anyway, a little off course there, but so those are just some of the shows I'm sure there are still more. But in terms of your list, anything else to add about the Christmas holiday season?
Yeah, I guess I'll shout out to two others. Black Nativity is also going to be opening at Vintage Theater around at the end of November. That one's a pretty classic adaptation, classic musical adaptation. It's a massive cast over there, and it's being directed by Alicia Young over there, director of Ideas, also a member of Vintage over there. So should be a good holiday production. And then another one that is, I think it's similarly adjacent. It's very whimsical, but not quite exactly holiday-y, is Matilda over at Town Hall Arts Center, which I personally am incredibly excited for. I'm a big fan of Matilda, the book, the musical, and the movies, all the Danny DeVito, and like the new one that was on Netflix. And they've got fantastic. They've got about, I think it was 10 or 11 kids in the cast, all playing all the parts. And then they've brought in a professional magician to consult and make it all magical and everything. So I think that should be a fun, whimsical holiday show too. And then finally, this is one that will sell out. So if you want to see it in some form, you got to get on it now. It's Drunk Christmas by Audacious Immersive. I know we've both been to this before, and it's a hoot and a half. It's Christmas Carol, but it's Dickens. They call it Dickens, but drunk is, I think, that one of their taglines, and that's pretty much it. It's Christmas Carol, but you're drinking, they're drinking. It's in a bar. It's a rowdy time. Yeah, that's a fun time. I'm going to be there again this year on the 24th of November. And I think it's at Odell's Brewery, so that they've definitely they've gotten into some bigger places, and it does sell out quite a bit. And I think it's this year it's impressive. I think they've got 5 different locations that they're performing at over all the different weekends, because just due to demand. So kudos to them. Raise a glass to them, I say. Yes, a drink with you, Audacious Theatre. So you can certainly enjoy your own beverages there, but the cast definitely imbibes while they're performing, and they get a little tipsy. So, all right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, a look around the state at all of the live theater coming up in November and into December that we haven't already talked about.
The OnStage Colorado podcast is sponsored in part by the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, Betsy, whose new production of Holly, Alaska features a merry band of community theater players who've been keeping the tradition of an annual holiday pageant alive for 119 years. But due to recent cutbacks, the town council has decided this year's show can't happen. So in a last-ditch effort to save the pageant and the town itself, the actors pull out the stops in this heartwarming tale of love, connection, and holiday revelry of the goofiest kind. Holly, Alaska runs from December 7th through the 31st at the Dairy Arts Center in Boulder. Get tickets at thedairy.org and learn more about the show at betsy.org. All right, welcome back to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm here with Toni Tresca. I'm Alex Miller, and it's time for our weekly look into some of the shows that you can see on stage right now around Colorado. So some of the reviews that we just had up on the site include The Book of Will at OpenStage up in Fort Collins, and our reviewer Carrie Redmond reviewed that. Really liked it. And then The Last Session at Town Hall. We have a review of that on there. Did you see that one, Toni?
I did. I was at the matinee yesterday. There's only one more chance to see it. It's a very limited run, one of the town halls, kind of one of those limited series that it's been doing and experimenting with within its programming. But I said this to the staff right after. I wish this had a slightly longer run, because it was a really moving story about this last recording session of this musician who has AIDS, and he believes that life is not worth living. So he is going to, once he finishes making this album, he's going to commit suicide. And it's kind of this really, really devastating, heartbreaking, but story about like this community around him teaching him to maybe this shouldn't be the last session.
Yep. Yeah, it sounded like a really powerful show, but there's a number of other reviews that we just had up on the site for shows that have already closed, so I won't mention any more of those, but also shows that are coming up that we'll be at or just opening. So I have to say, The Odd Couple is a very old Neil Simon play from like the 1960s that I often use as kind of the example of like the standard show that a theater might put up if they can't think of anything else. And and honestly, Neil Simon was a great playwright. He wrote a lot of really funny plays. I think some of them are a little dated, but the Firehouse Theater Company is doing like one with a multiracial cast. And I was like, I'm going to go see The Odd Couple. I have not actually seen the show in a very long time, and Firehouse always does such a great job. So I'm going to check that out. That's running November 18th through the 17th of December. And then in Montrose, the Magic Circle players are doing Death Trap. Not exactly a holiday show, but it runs the 17th through December 2nd. And then you mentioned Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at Candlelight. Annie will be at the Denver Center. It's a touring Broadway show. Eric will be at that one. That's a fairly short one, but you can catch it from November 21st through the 26th. And then The Little Prince is at the Ent Center in Colorado Springs from November 24th through December 17th. And isn't that like a Hans Christian Andersen story? I don't remember what The Little Prince is about. I don't know if it's holiday themed or what.
It is. I think it's like vaguely holiday-y. I have that in my mind. I remember seeing it when I was younger, but I can't recall anything about it.
So that's coming up. And what else, Toni? What else you got in your pocket for people to check out? I guess I would also shout out Curious Theater just opened Letters of Sarish this weekend. I was over there. I caught the final preview of that on Friday night, and it's directed by Julie Rada over there. It's her debut at Curious, and it's this four-hander. It's all reading letters and kind of this play about communication. It feels very pandemic-y because it was written in the pandemic and kind of is based around that. And it was pretty good. I think it's a really nice vehicle for the actors to really do these performances. But I think kind of the lack of action does make it a little bit stilted. Okay.
Have you gotten a chance to see that one yet?
No, I think Eric caught it this weekend, so we'll have a review on the site here in the next day or two, probably. So, cool. All right. Well, thanks, Toni, for coming on and going through all this stuff. Next week, we're going to have on your interview with Brian Mulgrave from the Arvada Center to talk about scenic design, which will be great. And so thanks again, and have a good rest of your weekend, Toni.
Thank you. Great conversation, as always, Alex. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks. All right. Stick around. Coming up is my interview with Leean Kim Torske from the Denver Center. All right. Well, we're here with Leean Kim Torske from the Denver Center. So she is the literary manager for the Denver Center Theater Company. And welcome to the podcast, Leean. Thanks for being on here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So I see you're actually in your office, that's exciting. I haven't been in an office in over 3 years myself. So what's it like?
It's nice. It's nice. I have plenty of room. I sometimes even bring in tables and do workshops right in my office.
That's great. So how long have you been the literary manager at the Denver Center?
I've been with the Denver Center a year. Last Halloween was my first day. And so it's been almost exactly a year.
Okay. So literary manager is often, I don't know if synonymous is the right word, but dramaturg is often sort of the same category of people. Can you explain what the difference is? And is that the right way to pronounce dramaturg?
Dramaturg, yeah.
Hard G.
A lot of times literary managers or literary directors come from a dramaturgy background. And the difference is that a dramaturg is generally working with on a play or a production in a specific capacity, providing context research or helping develop the play. Whereas a literary manager or a director of literary programs, or sometimes a director of new play development, somebody who runs a literary department, is running the literary department within a theater. So they're also working with agents and playwrights and other professional dramaturgs and serving as sort of the filter through which those things interact with a larger institution, and also a lot of times helping develop work as well. So a literary person within a theater often serves as a dramaturg for a production or works with playwrights as a dramaturg, but a literary manager is managing the literary processes for an entire theater.
Okay. So you could conceivably be hiring dramaturgs for specific productions or even performing in that role yourself for some as well, right?
Which I do, both of those things.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like every English major's dream job. It sounds just like a super cool thing to do. So how did you, what was your path to this profession?
Well, it's funny you mentioned English major. I have degrees both in English and in theater, in playwriting, and the craft and focus of playwriting and the education I got through that, coupled with the sorts of research skills that you get from and historical and literary context that you get through an English degree, really was the path through which I took. There are also dramaturgy programs specifically. So some people do train as a dramaturg or major in literary criticism and history and become dramaturgs as well.
All right. So I just wanted to stop for a second. A lot of people get hung up on just how to pronounce this. So you're saying dramaturgy, referring to the field, but dramaturg with a hard G as the noun. Okay.
That's how I pronounce it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll go with that then. So, I think it's for a lot of people, they don't really understand what a dramaturg does. So if we could focus on that for just a second, when people ask you, like, what's your kind of quick way to explain what a dramaturg does?
For me, when people ask that question, I generally say dramaturgs are professional question askers. But what the field of dramaturgy is one that explores and investigates the context and of the world of a play, the structure of a play, and is helping the creative team that's working on a play with understanding all of that. There are two types of dramaturgy generally. If you're working with a new play, a lot of time you're working more directly with the playwright as they're developing a new work. So you are looking at the structure of the play, but you might get down all the way down to specific lines or words, but you're helping the playwright through a series of question asking and an examination of the structure, helping the playwright tell the story that they want to tell. And that might be providing some research, or it might just be really focusing in on the play itself in a similar way that an editor works with a novelist. You also get hired in America. We a lot of times refer to it as a production dramaturg, where the play has already been produced and you are working on a production of something. So in that case, you're more there to help. Again, it's a focus on the storytelling, but providing context for the creative team, the designers, the directors, and actors. And sometimes drama and all three of those groups of artists do their own sorts of research, but a lot of times you are providing a research packet or a website that you've created specifically for that production that helps them understand the world of the play. That might be historical or social, cultural, political circumstances that influence the world of the play so that they can, as actors or directors or sometimes designers, understand or have a context for their portion of the work. Sometimes, in addition to that dramaturgy packet, there are questions that pop up during the rehearsal process, and they may ask you to do specific research because they have a question about a moment or an element of the play. But it is looking at context, looking at the overall storytelling, and helping provide support for that.
Okay, so if we picked, like, say, a historical context, can you think of a good example of where a dramaturg would jump in and say, here's what you need to know? Sure.
This spring, we're doing a production of Emma. And so that is it's an adaptation by Kate Hamill of Jane Austen's novel, but it is not strictly a period piece. It's having fun with the genre. So there would be a difference in how you would approach the materials. Kate Hamill's adaptation is not as interested in being historically accurate. So having the correct mannerisms or things that and gestures that would have been common to the era. However, because of the nature of the narrative and Emma being somewhat of a matchmaker or a Cupid character, understanding the social dynamics that existed in the world at that time and who it was considered appropriate to marry or to for people to be paired up with is important. Understanding gender roles for that and how that's different for Emma than it is for the male characters, and how she is of a certain class and so therefore is educated, but has very little or very few outlets for that education. Understanding that gender and the gender roles and the socioeconomic roles and are all important to the story itself and therefore to the characters.
Okay. And would the dramaturg go into like a rehearsal and address the cast, or just work directly with the director, or how does that work?
Every production is a new surprise, but generally a dramaturg does work with the director prior, asking what sorts of research are you interested in right now? What questions do you have? What resources can I provide for you? And what do you think is important for the cast to have? And so that helps guide your research a little bit. And oftentimes rehearsal processes start with what we call table work, where the cast and director are going very slowly through the script and talking about individual moments before ever getting onto their feet and doing scene work. And a lot of times dramaturgs also are a part of that portion, the early portion of a rehearsal process, to provide answers, research, or context for some of the questions that might pop up.
When you think about the types of plays or maybe even musicals that require dramaturgy, where do those fall in? I mean, I mentioned some things are straightforward enough that maybe they're not required. What kind of sort of catalyzes or is the spark to say, oh, we need a dramaturg in here?
Both dramaturgy and directing, if you look at the huge scheme, history of theater, are relatively new fields. And I think especially dramaturgs are becoming more and more useful in the process, or considered more and more useful in a process. Sometimes there's different types of dramaturgy that might be asked of you. So with something that is more, even with, I was the dramaturg for our recent production of A Little Night Music. So being able to point the cast towards other things that they might want to investigate, knowing that it was an adaptation of an Ingmar Bergman film. And so perhaps the cast might want to watch that film, knowing the play is set at around 1900 in Sweden. So knowing a little bit about the cultural dynamics, the class dynamics, gender dynamics of that time, knowing a little bit about theater history during that time as well, because the central character is an actress. And so knowing what her life would have been like in Sweden as an actress at that time, that sort of research is helpful. And then sometimes there are things that we might, just little minute details. There's a line in there that is about a lawn roller. And I was asked, what did a lawn roller look like at this time in Sweden? So providing that sort of imagery for the cast, but also within the lyrics of that piece, Sondheim uses a lot of wordplay and a lot of references to other literary works within the lines. He'll say, he'll reference an author or reference a specific novel. And so understanding who that author was, what they wrote about, or what the novel that they're referencing is about, and then contextualizing that within the line in the script helps the actor understand what that line means. Why does he reference Hans Christian Andersen in this way? That sort of thing.
Sure. Well, I imagine Shakespeare must keep dramaturgs very busy for actors.
Yes, a lot of times it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Especially because frequently with Shakespeare productions, there is a concept. At this point, it's the Shakespeare plays have been around for so long. So sometimes it's still the Shakespearean play, but they set it in a different time period, the production itself. And so understanding how the concept relates to the original work and what that might say to us as an audience today is helpful.
So from the audience's point of view, what would they see as the impact of a dramaturg on a particular play? I'm assuming it's kind of more of like a background kind of thing, but what might be the difference between a play that had one and one that didn't?
Well, sometimes it might just be that you were a part of the process that helps support the other artists. So actors might have a slightly deeper understanding of their character and what their circumstances are. So it just comes out through their performance and the authenticity of their performance. Sometimes dramaturgs also provide a lobby experience or dramaturgy within the lobby. There might be posters, there might be scenic elements that filter out into the lobby. There might be resources provided through a QR code that allow you to learn more. There might be a study guide that accompanies. Sometimes there's a physical copy, but if you look on the website for and that show specifically, a lot of times there is a link to a study guide. We have them for all of our shows here, and they are created by the dramaturg for that production. So that is a way to delve a little bit more deeply and get more information about the characters or the circumstances that inform the story. And one other way that I see dramaturgy expanding is that there's sometimes interaction within a community that a dramaturg might host pre-show workshops or bring community members in who have a particular connection to a show, or work in coordination with a community engagement person within our the theater to provide workshops or materials that enhance an audience member's understanding of a play.
Right. Yeah. I remember this past summer, I looked at some of the videos that the Colorado Shakespeare Festival, their dramaturgs had provided, and it was really helpful to hear what they had to say before you even go in and see the show for sure. So that makes a lot of sense that those materials that we see, the study guide, some of the posters you might see on the wall in the theater explaining the background of the play all come from the dramaturgy, sort of process. So that's great to know. So that's a very visible part of it. So, I wanted to ask also, so, the Denver Center has got, a full-time literary manager and the ability to hire dramaturgs. And what about smaller theaters? How can a smaller theater, get this kind of expertise affordably?
Yeah, there's sort of a standard model for, what a staff might look like, but depending upon the size of a theater, certain roles might not exist. The larger a theater is, the more necessary it is to have specific roles. So I've seen a lot of smaller theaters that don't have a specific literary role, that is something that other artistic members do. Or they might just have a literary associate, so you're not having as robust of a literary program. But even with theaters that I've worked with that were smaller in my career, that didn't have a literary person on their staff full time, they often still hire a dramaturg because especially if they feel a show could benefit from a certain understanding of a work. For instance, very early in my career, I worked on a production where the play was set in a very specific, very small, remote community, and there was not much out there about it, and it was far removed distance-wise from the theater that was producing it. So they hired me as a dramaturg to help learn about the specifics of that community and bring that in various forms of research to the cast and to the creative team so that they could understand that.
Well, it's a really fascinating field, and it sounds like a really cool thing to be part of. So So you said you've been here for about a year. Did you come from elsewhere? Where have you been working?
Yeah,
previously?
The last 10 years or so, I was in Chicago and active in the theater community there in various roles. Even when my full-time job, it may have been in a theater, but not necessarily in a literary role. Sometimes I was in a literary role. I was still freelancing evenings and weekends within their very robust storefront theater scene. So I was almost continuously working in dramaturgy or with playwrights or writing my things myself. So that is the experience that I brought with me here.
Okay. How do you like Denver so far?
Oh, I love Denver. Originally, I'm from Wyoming, so I know Denver well, and my brother has lived here for over 10 years. So I've been here quite a bit. So it felt a little bit like coming home.
Okay, great. Well, Leean, thanks so much for taking the time to talk through this with us. Is there anything that you might want to mention that we didn't touch on?
I don't think so. I think overall, I think dramaturgy is an interesting field, and that a lot of people, if you have a curious mind, might be interested in pursuing it. Also, if you just like being at the ground level of developing new works, it's a very exciting field to be a part of.
All right. Well, Leean Kim Torske at the Denver Center, thanks so much for joining us on the OnStage Colorado podcast, and best of luck with the next shows that are coming up.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode of the OnStage Colorado podcast. Thanks so much to Leean Kim Torske for coming on to talk about dramaturgy, and for Toni Tresca for helping out again, running through all those holiday shows coming up and everything else. Next week, we'll have Brian Malgrave from the Arvada Center in an interview Toni did where he talks about his many years as scenic director for the theater. Great stuff coming up, so if you haven't already, please subscribe to the OnStage Colorado podcast, wherever you get your audio stuff, and please give us a review or a couple of stars if you're enjoying this program, and let the other theater lovers in your life know about us. And be sure to check out all the reviews, news, other podcast episodes, and our full statewide theater calendar on the website at onstagecolorado.com. I'm Alex Miller, and we'll see you at the show.